everyone, welcome back to another installment of Let's Explore Columbia. Today we're going to be talking about daily life of miners and merchants during the gold rush, and we're going to start our tour with an examination of this house right here. This is called the Tibbets house. You can see it's pretty long. This house was actually two separate cabins joined into one. So let's go inside and see what the parlor looks like. So step on into the parlor, make sure you wipe your feet and have a look around. So you can notice the fancy wallpaper, the beautiful curtains, the nice furnishings. Here we have the lovely clock, the brick fireplace, the stove to keep the building warm. Definitely an example of an upper class merchant's lifestyle. So the parlor room is where during that time you would entertain your guests. You would socialize. You would maybe play a game of cards here. You can see the portraits on the wall, the photos. We have Mr. Tibbets and Mrs. Tibbets. Now Miss Tibbets was very excited to have this lovely parlor because she needed space to entertain her many guests. In this photo you can see photo studios back then were a really big deal. You didn't get your photo taken very often. So she's wearing her fanciest dress, very nice jewelry. He's wearing a very fancy suit. Tell me in the comments, do you think most people back then could afford going to a photo studio to have their photo taken? Let me know. Do you think everyone had their photo taken back then? Now, we also have in here some examples of women's clothing during this era. So, if you remember in the mining shack, tell me, what were miners wearing? Do you remember the clothes I held up to show you that miners would wear? Well, now I'm going to show you an example of women's clothing. So women's hats were very different than miners' hats. So they would wear bonnets with this ribbon that you tie around under your chin. And then here's an example of a dress that would be worn back then as well, a calico dress. So you can see it's very long, goes to the ground. It has long sleeves. So as they're walking around, they'd have to hold their dress up so their dress doesn't get muddy. So very different than miners' clothing. So that is the parlor. Let's go outside and check out some other businesses. You can see beyond us at the end of the street, we have the Wells Fargo stage office and the bank. Also popular businesses back then. Right here, right next to the Tibbets house, you can see this wall that's collapsed. Now this building is actually one of the oldest buildings in Columbia. This is called the Brainerd Building. And if you notice from the front, it looks like a typical building. You can see the brick, you can see those iron doors. But if you look inside, take a close look in there, you can see the rest of the building is gone. We only really have the front building, the front wall left. So there's no longer a roof, there's no longer the rest of the building. It's collapsed over time. But it was one of the oldest buildings that we did have in Columbia. Another business is this one right here. Tell me in the comments, what is this business? Can you tell by this pole? This is a barber shop. So barber shops were very popular places to go. You'd go there to get your hair cut, to get your beards trimmed. It's also a place to socialize back then as well. You'd also go here to take a bath. So they would set up a pretty big bathtub, fill it with water. There'd be a line of miners outside. Now, tell me in the comments, do you think every single miner in line is going to get their own clean bath water? Do you think they'll all get their own bath water? No, they will not get their own bath water. They have to share that bath water. If you have the most money, you can go first in line and get the cleanest bath water. If you don't have a lot of money, you're going to be in the back of the line. You might go 6th or 7th. By then, the bathwater you're sharing is going to be really dirty, so you're not going to be able to get that clean. Doesn't sound very hygienic. Let's continue. Another business back then would be the blacksmith. Tell me in the comments, what kind of tools do you think blacksmiths would make for miners? Think about the tools that I showed you in the mining shack as well. So they'd make a variety of tools here. If you had a hole in your pan, they would come here and they would fix it for you. They would also make something that could be used on a certain type of animal. What do you think blacksmiths would make that could be used for an animal? Let's see if you can guess what it could be. Now, if anyone said horseshoes, you are correct. So horses were a very popular animal to have back then. You'd use them for transportation. If you didn't have a horse, because not everyone did, you could come here to this barn, also called a livery stable, and you could rent a horse. So there'd be horses available for you to rent. You could sell your horses here. You could trade your horses here. We don't have any horses in this building today, but let's go inside and see what else we have. So instead of having horses, we have another form of transportation, and those are carriages. So let's take a look at the different carriages that would be used back then. This carriage right here is called a day carriage. This is carriage number 1. So this is the day carriage. It seats about 4 people. It has that covering to protect it from rain, and it can go a pretty long distance. Carriage number 2 are these colorful carriages right here. These are called roundabout carriages. They can fit about 2 people, and you can see their big tires, their big axle. That allows the carriages to turn sharp, narrow corners in town. So these are carriage number 2. And carriage number 3 is this red supply wagon right here. Now this would be a helpful wagon to have if you're a merchant and you need to haul some supplies. Maybe you want to move it, sell things in a different town. You'd sit up here on this bench and pull your wagon that way. Now, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, which wagon would you want to buy if you had enough money to buy a wagon back then? Which one do you think would be the best purchase? Wagon number 1, wagon number 2, or wagon number 3? Let me know in the comments. Go back on the main street. Now, if you notice in Columbia today, the streets are completely paved, just like the streets that they have in your town as well. Well, streets were not paved during the gold rush, so it would have just been a dirt road. You can imagine when this was a dirt road, after it rains, how muddy it would get here. So wagons could potentially get stuck, people walking would get very dirty, which is why it's helpful to have these boardwalks. So all throughout Columbia, there are boardwalks in front of the buildings. They're made out of wood or they're made out of brick. This would protect you so you don't have to walk in the mud. As you may have noticed in some other buildings in town, we have these large metal iron doors. These doors protect from fire. Since fire was a huge danger back then, if there's a fire down the street, heading your way, it's going through other buildings on the block, you'd shut these metal doors to prevent fire from getting inside your building and destroying your business. Now, our final stop today is going to be a game that was played back then. It's a form of entertainment. It was a very popular game. I bet some of you have played this game before. Let's see if you can guess what it is. So enter inside of, can you tell what it is? If you said bowling, you are correct. This is a bowling alley. Bowling was played during this time. very popular game. It's like a saloon or a gambling game. Let's take a closer look at this bowling alley. So, just like in your bowling alleys, there's the bowling balls, very different than ours today, pretty small, and there's no holes. Now, if you notice, there's no big claw that's gonna come down and reset those pins you see beyond me at the end of the alley, so you're gonna have to do all of that yourself. So every single time someone bowls, they have to go to the end of the alley and reset the pins. You can imagine how long that game is if you're having to do most of the work. I think I'm gonna bowl for you right now, so let's see how I do. So get a good shot and take the bowling ball. Oh, that was awful. You know, I'm gonna do it again. I can do better than that. Let's see. Hey, that's more like it. Straight this time. However, there's some bad news to getting a strike, and that is that now I have to reset all the pins for the next player. So, it's not always a good thing. Now, I'm going to place my ball in this little alley right here, and it's going to go back down to the next player. Now, as I mentioned, bowling is like a saloon game, a popular gambling game. So you can see over here we have different wines, and then there's some cards as well. Now, for a lot of miners, they made horrible mistakes in these types of buildings, in these saloons. They lost a lot of their gold here. They made bad decisions. And they didn't always, think about the future. So a lot of times they would bet their gold. They could bet like a pinch of gold or a little cup full of gold, and then they would lose it. So not bad choices happen in these saloons. That's going to conclude my tour of Columbia today. Before I go though, I want to tell you all a big announcement. Tomorrow, Columbia turns 170 years old. We're going to be 170 tomorrow. Please wish us a happy birthday in the comments below. It's almost our birthday. It's almost here. We're so excited. Thank you everyone for joining me this week during these live streams. Loved being able to share Columbia with you all. Bye everyone from Columbia. Don't forget to wish us happy birthday.